Welcome to the Octagram, UFC, boxing, and combat sports. Mark Charles, let's go.
Welcome to the Octagram. Thank you for joining us. I'm joined right now by standout American top team featherweight UFC fighter. His name is Charles Rosa, Boston Strong. What's up, my man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. You're also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. That's also very notable to talk about, and a Peabody, Massachusetts native. So shout out to Peabody.
Yep, you already know. And today I'm rocking the Mickey Ward shirt. So Mickey Ward boxing.
That's sick, man. Oh, and boxing runs deep in your family as well. Your uncle. You got to remind me of his name. I don't have
Tom,
it in my notes.
my uncle is Tom the Bomb Rosa.
There it is. Awesome. Yeah.
I
didn't have that in my notes. I'm sorry about that. But I did run across that as I was reading about you. So you're scheduled to fight UFC 249. That's coming up in just about a week and a half or so. May 9th. It's going to be live on pay-per-view, ESPN+. You're going up against an up-and-coming young guy, Bryce Mitchell. You guys have very similar records, both about 12 wins each as pro MMA fighters. You guys were supposed to originally meet May 2nd, which is a couple days from now in Oklahoma City, but it got pushed up 1 week. It seems like that's not like such a bad case or worst case scenario compared to some of the other reschedulings we've seen. So being pushed forward a week, has that been okay with you? It's not such a thorn in the side?
Yeah, no, it was fine. The week was fine. The only thing is, like, for one day, I'd say like a 24-hour period, they told me the fight was canceled. And I was like, you sure the fight's canceled? Like, is it? Like, well, it's actually not canceled. It's postponed. And I was like, well, when's the earliest it could be? And they were like, I would say the very end of May or June. And I'm like, okay. So, like, that day I just went and balled out, ate a bunch of food. Like, I just got a bunch of Italian food, pizza, pasta, just like everything that I was craving. So it was actually kind of good to have that little break, like one day in between, to just kind of like relax my mind, relax my body. Actually, I think it honestly worked out for the best because, I'm right back on point right now. So everything was good. But it was pretty cool to just be like, all right, well, let's go.
Fair enough. And now the fight goes from being in Oklahoma City originally on May 2nd, but now on May 9th, you're just going to shoot up to Jacksonville, Florida, right here in your home state that you live in now. Do you prefer that? I mean, do you prefer to fight here in Florida as far as the travel and the fight week goes?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I fought 20 amateur fights in Florida. I was the number one amateur fighter in the country at one point, fighting, I'd say, at least half my fights in Florida. So, Florida is basically like a hometown fight for me. This is going to be, I consider this a hometown fight. I mean, I've been in Florida for 10 years now. Moved down here 10 years ago, and that's when I started fighting 10 years ago. So, like I said, a bunch of amateur fights. I was the Rise of a Warrior champion in Port St. Lucie. Like, that was a big tournament. They had one of the biggest amateur tournaments in the U.S. at the time. And I just, Florida is my home now at this point. So, I'm really happy they moved it here rather than being in Oklahoma in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Especially with no fans and no crowd. Like, if you were to go to Oklahoma to do that, right? It's probably a little easier.
It's a good point. Think of that. It's like, well, at least if you go to Oklahoma, they get the fans and Thunderdome or whatever it's called that the team plays in. But if there's no fans there, then what are you going there for?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
You mentioned the Tiger King, dude. That's the only thing I knew about Oklahoma. I didn't know nothing about it.
Well, I have heard that Oklahoma does need some better MMA referees, so Joe Exotic might be available.
Oh, that would be great.
That'd be amazing. So speaking of, being an MMA fighter, basically exactly 10 years to the day, your first MMA fight as an amateur, at least that's on record that I was able to pull. It'll come up in October. I believe you started October 2010 was your first fight. So looking back, let's just say for sake of conversation, it's been 10 years. How do you compare that Charles Rosa 10 years ago, who, by the way, went, I think, like 17 or 18-0 as an amateur. So obviously you were a killer. How do you compare that Charles Rosa to today's Charles Rosa, who's in the UFC 12-3, up and coming featherweight, ready to break through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same exact guy. The first fight, I think believe it or not, my first fight ever was probably my best performance ever. I remember I was fighting in a ring, like it was a Muay Thai fight. And I remember I flying kneed the kid and hit him, and he fell through the ropes onto the judges' table. And I was like, man, I don't even have the video of it. I wish I did. It was epic. But I just basically I'm the same kid, just with better skills now. So I mean, I'm the same ferocious, hardworking kid that's never going to quit in a fight. But now the difference is I was a white belt at the time. Didn't have any actual fighting skills besides what I learned on my own in the streets, fighting in Boston and fighting in hockey games, and hockey fights. But now it's like I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I've trained all over the world, to Thailand. I've been to Holland to train Dutch kickboxing,
Nice.
been all over the planet learning the best and training at the best gym, American Top Team. So this is the only difference you have is just the skills now, same person.
Yeah, and aside from the in-cage training, and being a chef as well, which I promise we're going to spend some time on it a little bit here. We'll talk about food and stuff like that. But you're also a nutritionist. I know you work with a higher level nutritionist as well. Like you don't just rely on yourself, but you're a nutritionist as well. So did you have that skill set 10 years ago?
Yeah, actually I did. 10 years ago is right when I graduated school. I graduated from Johnson & Wales Culinary Arts program. And, I graduated with a degree in culinary arts and, a candidate to be a nutritionist. And, that was like my first passion. I just wanted to be a chef. And that's when I moved to Florida, started working at this really nice 5-star steakhouse, Club 432. So I worked in the restaurant for 8 or 9 years, worked really hard just to be able to pay my bills. Cause, being a pro fighter before you get UFC doesn't really do the trick, so I had to work 2 jobs, fighting as a pro and that, but yeah, that's pretty much, so, I had that knowledge when I moved to Florida, and it's helped me tremendously with my weight cuts and my diet and, going into these fights in elite shape.
Before we switch gears, just quickly, what would you tell yourself if you knew what you knew today about the fight game? What would you tell yourself 10 years ago? If you could just tell yourself one thing.
I tell myself to, you got to train smarter, not harder, So like the harder you train I always and I still struggle with it. It's like, I always think if the harder I train, the better I'm going to be, but it's not really necessarily true. If you could train smarter, not harder, that's what I would tell myself.
Great advice. That's a good advice. All right, let's switch gears, talk a little bit about being a chef. If for whatever reason you're just joining maybe the radio show on the air, I just want to remind you we're on the phone with UFC featherweight Charles Rosa. He steps into the octagon on a pay-per-view only, no fan show, UFC 249, May 9th, and that's on ESPN Plus. You can order it right now so you don't forget later. All right, so Charles Rosa, not just a UFC fighter, not just a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt murderer, who can't wait, by the way, to get in there with Bryce Mitchell, who's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu killer, which we can't wait for that. As a fan, that's the fight right there. Like, Cody and Justin is the fight. And there's so many great fights on there, but like that, especially for the grappling fans, that's the fight. So looking forward to that. Now let's switch gears. You are, as you said, you're a trained culinary arts specialist. You're a chef. I'm going to start off with a hard question, if you don't mind. What is your opinion on exotic animals eaten as food? Obviously not so much here in the United States, but around the globe. What is your opinion on that as a chef?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't eaten many exotic animals, so I can't tell you, but I would just say it comes down to the laws. Like, if it's legal where it is there, then that is what it is. And if that's what they eat, that's their customs and their tradition. Like, that's a big thing that people don't understand. Like, what is normal here in some other, or what's not normal here in some other countries, completely normal. Like, when I went to Thailand, they have 4 and 5-year-old kids fighting each other, like, for money. And like, it's just, for me, it didn't make, I'm like, man, why are these kids crying? Like, one time, like, I was training and the kid was crying in Thailand, and I'm like, he didn't want to fight. And I'm like, well, the kid doesn't want to fight, don't make him fight. And they're like, well, Charles, this is the custom here. Like, this is what they have to do. So for me, it's kind of like the customs of the place. But I mean, so it depends where you are, you know what I'm saying? So I don't really have much of an opinion besides, like, depends where you are and like what the laws are,
Fair enough. Legalities and culture definitely play a part into it. So obviously, you know what I'm kind of alluding to here, but I'm not trying to get into the conversation about it. But what kind of training or guidelines are you given when you go to culinary arts school for handling meats and stuff like that? Because obviously raw meats can carry diseases, salmonella, E. coli, all those types of things. So what kind of guidelines and what kind of training are you given when you go to culinary arts school for the handling?
Yeah, I would say that's what I learned the most of. Like, I definitely learned how to cook and stuff like that, but I think I learned more how to cook in the restaurants and, from my dad, like, growing up as a kid. Then the main thing that I learned in culinary school was like guidelines and stuff like that, and like sanitation and stuff like that, because that stuff's very important. So that's like the big difference you get of someone that's actually has a degree in culinary arts and someone not, because you're like, oh, well, I never went to culinary school, but I'm a better chef. But it's like, well, do you really have like the little things that the professionalism? So like, that's a very important part of it. Like, plating the foods, or even what you just mentioned, like sanitation and stuff like that. Like, you can have the best taco joint in the world because you grew up in Mexico making street tacos, but if it's unsanitary, then who wants to eat that stuff? So that's kind of what biggest part of it, what I learned and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of guidelines that people don't understand, and storing of food, not putting, like even when you store food in the refrigerator, like not putting meats on top of like vegetables or something, because the meat can drip down onto the food and contaminate it. So cross contamination is huge. So these are things that are super important with guidelines and stuff like that, and things that fortunately I learned in school.
Very good. I was hoping you would say that because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I've never been to culinary arts school myself.
Yeah.
Just a quick, I guess, sidebar. Your thoughts on washing chicken in the sink? There's a big debate about that.
I think it's a bad idea because that's cross contamination. I mean, if you bleach the sink and you wash it out appropriately after, it's bad. But I learned in culinary school that literally germs and like salmonella are living organisms. So the way they explain it to us in school is they're living organisms. So they can literally jump in, they can move around. So if you have a little spot here, that stuff can cross-contaminate onto other stuff next to it, even if it doesn't even directly touch it. So if you even leave a little speck in your sink and then you go and you wash your celery or your lettuce in that sink after, and you didn't properly contaminate that surface, dude, you get sick, you get salmonella poisoning, and you can die from that. So it's very serious. And, I didn't think before I went to culinary school, like I never practiced much of that stuff. Like I was like, oh yeah, I have a strong stomach, I'll be fine. But I met a kid in culinary school, and I remember he told me, like, he's like, oh, my mom died of salmonella poisoning. And he was like, she was perfectly healthy. She just ate, something that was cross-contaminated, and she died. And I was like, dude, like, so ever since, remember that kid told me that story, I was like, well, I guess this stuff is serious,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sorry for your classmate. It gets even worse if I could just throw a detail in there, add physics to it. You're washing the chicken in the sink, and then you turn the water on, and that initial splash of the water is detrimental. I mean, that could be very dangerous stuff there. But I appreciate your thoughts and sentiment on that. Obviously, it's quite important topic in the world right now, and as we move forward in these times. So, cooking in the kitchen. You've already mentioned pasta once. I know that's one of the favorites, of course, for chefs. But what would you say outside of pastas would be your favorite culinary dish to prepare, whether it's an entree or a dessert, whatever it might be?
Well, I'll say, I mean, you said not the pasta, but my favorite dish to prepare, and you don't need pasta with it, is chicken parmesan. Like that's my go-to meal. Like I love eating that after I fight. Like that's, I basically have this thing where I just like go on tours around the world, try to find the best chicken parmesan. So, I've gotten some pretty good ones, and it's one of my hobbies, so I'm gonna keep doing it. But that's like, my search is try to find the best one in the world. So I'm still doing that, and I make a really good one myself. But yeah.
What's the trick? What's your what separates you from Olive Garden? What's your, not giving away any secrets, but what's your?
It's the simplest thing, and this is the thing that makes culinary, and this one word is, and it's freshness and ingredients. Like fresh ingredients. Like if you have fresh ingredients, make a world of a difference. If you're using, the freshest, like a really fresh chicken, like or fresh meat, or using fresh basil and spices and stuff that you grew in your own garden or from a farm, like it makes so much of a difference. And I think that's like a big part of it that people, don't understand, like the difference of buying, like, your chicken from like a place, or even meats more than chicken, like from a place that's like, reputable, or a place that's not,
like a real butcher rather than your, when you're
also what they feed the animals, like if some of the stuff you could be getting, they're feeding the chickens like friggin' other chickens, it's crazy as it sounds, or you can get it from a place that's giving them like a good feed and some corn and stuff that like you would eat, you know what I'm saying? So that's what makes it.
Absolutely. And it's also what those animals are eating is extremely important. Like a grass-fed cow compared to a cow that's not grass-fed and doesn't get those organic meals and stuff on a daily basis. When they're transferring those proteins and nutrients to us, we're getting all that, all the bad stuff as well too. So because the animal essence is the vehicle from the nutrients, because they eat the plants and then they transfer the nutrients.
Yeah, that's usually what separates some of the best beef in the world is the Kobe beef, the Wagyu. It's very expensive. I'm sure you've heard of it, but they literally feed the cows like beer and like like hops and stuff like that, like stuff that like really good stuff, so it gets that perfect marbling of the meat. So like stuff like that, like it makes a big difference in food.
Interesting. Where's the best chicken parm that you've had that you didn't cook?
Ooh, I'd say Providence, Rhode Island. I'd have to say there's two spots. There's Carmine's and then there's Constantino's. So these are my two favorite chicken parmesans in the world right now, and they're both in New England, Providence, Rhode Island, and Federal Hill. It's like basically like Little Italy up in Providence, and Federal Hill. I lived there for like 3 years when I went to school. It's like a mob-run town, pretty badass. So I fought a bunch of fights up there for CES and the Jimmy Birchfield family. They got me 5 wins, 5 first-round finishes to help propel me into the UFC. So grateful for them and their family too. But yeah, man, I love that city, Providence, Rhode Island.
Love it. Speaking of the Northeast, speaking of that region, that brings me to my next topic. Tom Brady coming down to Florida.
Oh yeah.
I'm just going to give you the floor. What was your initial thoughts when you heard that? Other than the silver lining of you being in Florida.
Yeah, that's like the good part of it for sure. Like him and Gronk are here now, so hopefully I can drive up to some of the games. But I mean, I still don't want to believe it. Like I guess until the first game actually kicks off, like I'm still hoping that maybe they'll make a last minute trade and get him back or something. So it's crazy because like the dynasty has been insane since I've been a kid, since I've watched football since I can remember. I was 11, 12 years old and watching football when, Tom Brady came in for Drew Bledsoe and won the Super Bowl. And like, I've been a spoiled brat when it comes to football. There's no doubt about that. It's what it is. But, Tom Brady's the GOAT. I don't think there's any arguing that. And, he's my idol, one of the guys I looked up to the most, as a kid and even still now. Like, if you look at my UFC profile, it says, like, your idol or something like, or your hero or something. I'm like Tom Brady because he's a legend, dude. I love the guy, but it sucks to see him gone. But if he could go anywhere, it literally would be right here. He's in Tampa and Florida, so it's like a 3 or 4 hour drive for me. So hopefully I can still see him, see him fighting and stuff. See him not fighting but playing.
Well, actually, bold prediction on my part. By the way, I'm in Tampa. I'm not sure if you knew that or not.
Yeah. You said you were Tampa. Yeah.
So
actually pretty cool. You must be pumped, right? I mean,
dude, he's my favorite football player of all time, like ever. I lived in Detroit for 20 years, so it's not like it was not like I've been I was never lived in Mass. Like I wasn't from Michigan, but even when I lived there, so he's my favorite. But bold prediction. If anybody can do it, it's Dan Lambert to get Tom Brady into a gym to train MMA. Bold prediction, within 1 year, Tom Brady will at least have a little publicity stunt of training MMA in South Florida. And that is my bold prediction. I have no tips. Dan hasn't alluded to anything. I just feel like if there's anybody that can do something like that, it's Dan. It's your coach.
I believe it. Yeah, Dan could definitely make that happen. He's made a lot of really cool stuff happen. And I wouldn't be surprised, but if he trains there, you better bring me in, man. I'll kick his ass because he already knows. He gives me shit. I just saw him today. He was giving me shit about Tom Brady. It's every time I see him, but I think it's really because he loves Tom Brady. That's the truth,
So Tom Brady's won 6 Super Bowl rings. They're all memorable for me. I'm not enough of a Patriots diehard to have this type of knowledge. But for you, I think you would. So which of those 6 Super Bowl wins was the best one? Which one meant the most in your perspective? Which was the best?
Oh, I mean, they're all obviously so meaningful. I think, I just think like the first one, it was like what made him. So for me, I think the first one's is the biggest, even though he didn't play the whole season and get the team there. But to take like a guy from, 199th overall draft pick, underdog, to put him in the game when all the chips are down, everyone's like, oh man, we got our backup coming in, and to pull off a Super Bowl win is pretty historic. And then not just to do it by luck or something like that, and to be able to come back and do it 5 more times just secures his position as the GOAT. And it's pretty, every one of them is meaningful. I think, the coolest season was the one they were undefeated, was with when they had the undefeated season. Unfortunately, they lost, but when they had Randy Moss, that season was nuts. I actually, because I went to school in Providence, Rhode Island, I played on the hockey team for the Wildcats, the Johnson & Wales Wildcats hockey team, and we got to work as ushers at the game. So I got to go to all the Patriots games when Randy Moss was touchdowns, and
that's awesome.
I watched him catch 80-yard touchdown passes from front row. You know what I'm saying? I was like supposed to be working, but I was just watching the game. I was like, yeah, right. Go sit
That's
wherever
awesome.
you want. Like, you know what I mean? So I got to watch those games live, and it was pretty amazing. You know?
That is awesome. That's pretty sick. I mean, we can talk Tom Brady and all day for sure. Let's try to circle back around to Fight Night coming up here. But before that, I noticed that you're at UFC 3, which is great. The EA Sports game.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is sort of like a dream come true for you, like being in a video game. Obviously, right?
For sure.
They've got you rated, if my memory serves me correct, in the high 80s, but your grappling's rated at 88. How do you feel about that? You're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist, black belt. You've tapped them out. Your last win over, give me 1 second here. Your last win, armbar over Manny Bermudez in October.
Yeah.
You're 88 in the game. What gives?
Yeah, they got to update that shit, man. I don't know. Like, I mean, I have the best jiu-jitsu in the featherweight division, and I don't think there's any arguing that. Anybody that wants, they can test me. I mean, they said that about my last fight. Oh, Manny Bermudez, he has 12 submission wins. He's the best jiu-jitsu guy, right? One of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the division. Yeah, how do you feel going on the ground with him? Are you worried that he's gonna submit you? And he's very good, but he's not better than me. I mean, like I said, I'm a black belt Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I trained American Top Team with some of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners on the planet Earth. And I mean, you can ask any one of them, what my skill level is there. And, I've been able, I'm a submission specialist. You can look at all my wins. I think I got 9 submission wins out of my, on my pro fights. And that's what I love. And, it's one of my passions is jiu-jitsu. And I don't think there's anybody that has better MMA jiu-jitsu in the planet right now. And that's what I'm going with, and that's what I want to make clear coming into this fight. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to fight Bryce Mitchell. Like said, he's coming off submission of the year, like the biggest. He's coming off a twister submission, won the submission of the year award, and I mean, I want to show that who's the real badass in the division. So I'm gonna be able to show that May 9th. I'm excited to do so.
No doubt about it. You took the words out of my mouth. Bryce came off this last year with only the second twister in UFC history. As a BJJ enthusiast yourself, obviously you weren't matched up with him at the time, so there was that animosity or whatever wasn't there at the time. But were you impressed by that twister, or what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't take that away from the kid. I mean, he pulled off a legendary submission against against the guy he did it to. I think that would be the only thing to put into consideration. He didn't submit like another black belt or another high-level jiu-jitsu guy. I think it was mostly a striker, but, hats off to him that he's able to get at the ground and put the guy in the position. So definitely can't take that from him. He did it against, another UFC fighter. There's no easy UFC fights. That's one thing that's for sure. Every time you get in there, you're fighting. It's basically like a title fight. You're fighting the best guy from his area in the whole world. Like, it might be, if you're fighting a guy from Mexico, you're fighting the number 1 Mexican in the world in that weight class. If you're fighting a guy from Europe, you're usually fighting the number 1 European fighter in that weight class. There's not many guys that make it to this high level, and if you do fight them, you're fighting the very best. So like I said, hats off to him that he was able to pull that off. But I'm excited to get in there with him and show him what I got. So hopefully he tries that against me.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, grappler versus grappler, traditionally, at least in modern history, the last, 5, 6, 7 years of the UFC, typically elite grappler, a lot of times we see it cancel each other out and we end up having a nice stand-up fight. Do you suspect that you guys might actually want to challenge each other on the ground with all that's been talked about?
I mean, I would love to. I really hope that, he takes to the ground or tries to. And I mean, I would love that. That's my world. It'd be like, I'm a shark on the ground and he's coming into my water. He's going to get eaten up. But, if he keeps the fight on the feet, he's going to pay too. And then I think that's probably what's going to happen. He's going to come in hard on the feet, come in aggressive. He's going to eat some hard shots. If he's able, he seems like a pretty tough kid. So if he does survive the shots and doesn't get knocked out, he's going to get desperate and come in for a shot. And that's when things are going to get ugly for him. And he's going to realize, he's outclassed and he's in a different world. And that's, I'm excited to put on the show and show the world what I got. And, you can ask anybody I train with in the gym, my submission skills. If he wants to take it there, he's going to find out the hard way, like all my other opponents.
You said it, my man, Charles Rosa, Boston Strong. He's out of American Top Team, and he goes up against Bryce Mitchell Saturday, May 9th, and it's going to be live on ESPN+. That is UFC 249. No crowd, so order the pay-per-view now. Charles Rosa, you can follow him on Twitter at Charles Rosa MMA. All the culinary arts stuff going on there, not just MMA stuff. So you can see him cooking in the kitchen and training for his fights. And I'd also like to see you visit chuckysfight.com. That's his family's charity. Check that out and see if that's something that you'd like to help them out with. Thank you so much, my man. It's been a pleasure, and I'm hoping to talk to you soon. We'll get you on the victory tour.
I appreciate you, man. I'll catch up with you after May 9th after I choke this kid out. Thanks.
Right. And if you don't, I want that Canadian flag you stole from the Montreal game. I want that.
I still got it, actually. Actually, my uncle got it. But, yeah, I got that Canadian flag locked up in a safe place for a special occasion. So.
All right, man. Have a safe fight camp, and we will see you fighting on May 9th.
All right. Later, brother.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit that subscribe button down there. And when you're done with that, go on over to Instagram and Twitter and follow us at The Octagram and on Facebook.com/TheOctagramMMA.